Sniper Elite Resistance on Steam Deck thanks to Rebellion for providing a code of the game. So I've been busy with other games coverage and I can finally tackle this one. I'm a huge Sniper Elite fan, so I was looking forward to this. In the game information, since day one, the game has been verified on Steam Deck, so all functionality is accessible, game shows Steam Deck controls, interface legible on Steam Deck, default graphics configuration performs well on Steam Deck. So looking good from day one. Let's see how it goes. So when it comes to the options menu, we have a good amount of resolutions, even 1152 by 720. I say a good amount of resolutions because usually 16 by 10, many new games are just locked to 16 by 9, so no black bars at the top and bottom. If you want to go for a slightly lower resolution, 1152 by 720 is also there, and you can control it with the FSR from SteamOS. Render scale 100%, we don't need to get higher than that, asynchronous compute enabled. In the graphics details, these are basically the settings I recommend. This is for 45 FPS. Anti-aliasing on medium because on high and higher than that, it's over-sharpened. Not sure what's going on with that. Shadow detail on low, reflections on medium, draw distance on medium. This is a big one, especially on bigger maps with lots of foliage. Texture detail on high, water detail on medium, tessellation disabled for a small increase in performance. You mostly notice it in the main character when I change it, but it's not that obvious unless you're looking closely, so I think disabling it is fine. Then we got, well, ambient occlusion, I recommend you keep it on, otherwise the game looks super flat, especially when it comes to the terrain, as you can probably notice. And then we get an option called Obscurance Fields. This is for soft shadows around the characters. So if I turn it off, looking at the character there, it's a bit darkened to blend it better with the environment. Sometimes it's a little bit too dark, like old versions of SSAO. So this is personal preference. You can get a small improvement in performance with this disabled. I'll keep it enabled because I think it looks good enough. So welcome to Sniper Elite Resistance. Let me change the camera view. So these settings, again, I decided on this due to the 45 FPS cap. This is native resolution, but as you can probably notice by the visuals, there's a lot of aliasing. The anti-aliasing is not particularly effective in this game. On the consoles, the same happens, which is a shame really, that you have to force super sampling, and there's some flickering on the reflections on medium when you move around. But again, I think the anti-aliasing really leaves a lot to be desired. So at least when it comes to the image quality, is consistently very aliased. On the smaller screen it really goes better. But for some reason anti-aliasing on Ultra sharpens the image even further. But performance so far is pretty good. When you're outside, it's basically dropping frames when there is foliage on screen. So at that point it drops to 45. But as I told you at the beginning, using obscurance fields, the option in the graphics menu, there's a very dark shadow for the character, especially around the character. So again, if you don't like that, you can turn it off. I think it's good. Good enough, better said.
Gestapo been here a few days at least.
So let's get into actual combat. I'm going to go into a place where the enemies can see me and see what happens with the CPU. But this is basically Sniper Elite 5 with more missions and a different main character. So far that's what I noticed. There it goes, X-ray cam. Also, it can drop frames when you're using those X-ray cams, but you're not actually playing the game when you look at them.
Calm and quiet.
So let's shoot him somewhere else instead of the head to get a different outcome in the arm. Oops. He doesn't care that I'm here, I guess. Okay, we didn't get a camera there, that's okay. But in a more geometrically packed place such as this one, as long as foliage is a little bit far away, you should be good. So I think locking into 45 should give you good battery life, because in moments like this it can go higher than 45. So by capping the frame rate, you are letting the CPU breathe and the GPU breathe a bit further. So it should give you a better battery life. Maybe on the LCD Steam Deck, lock it to 40. So yeah, this is the second mission. The first mission is way less demanding, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. When it comes to the first mission is in a dam, and it's a smaller map actually. There is bigger draw distance when it comes to that. But again, usually when I'm looking at foliage is when it likes to drop. Otherwise, the game is completely fine when it comes to being above 45. But if you look at the very beginning of the mission, first impressions will always be good. So I was standing right there. As soon as I zoom into the foliage, drops into the 40s. But then, looking into the distance, it's completely fine, above 60. So let's see how it looks on the smaller screen, and we're going to also try 60 frames even while looking at foliage. Okay, after multiple failed attempts, there it goes, 300 and something meters. Okay, so we're back in the same scene, but now portable mode. Again, as I told you before, you aim to foliage, you tend to drop into the 40s, especially in other levels that are a bit larger. This one is actually a pretty small level in comparison. Open the Steam menu, scroll all the way down to frame limit, and put it at 45. If you're on the Steam Deck LCD, maybe 40s, but up to you. Good battery life with decent motion. Again, not a next-gen looking game. This came out also on PS4. I'm horrible at this with a controller. I play Sniper Elite with mouse and keyboard, as God intended. In this case, I need to use the binoculars. Otherwise, if my scope is not 20x, I won't see the enemy at 330 meters. So yeah, let's grab the rifle. And I'm going to use assists for this, otherwise I'm not hitting anything. There it goes. And we're talking about 3-4 hours of battery with this configuration. Ooh, nice. Again, with the assists it gets very easy, but I'm playing with a gamepad. There it goes. I'll probably use a better scope. There it goes. Brain destroyed. So yeah, looking into a distance like this, it's okay. This level is not particularly demanding. Let's get into the more demanding one, quote unquote. Okay, now we're in the more demanding part because there is more foliage close to the camera. Now the GPU usage is much higher. This is where I started the video actually. So what about this part drops frames more? Again, looking at foliage, as soon as you get into the castle, it's completely fine. So I think this is the best way to play it when it comes to visuals. You can still see the aliasing despite being a smaller screen. But again, this game also came on PS4 and Xbox One. It's not a next-gen title, quote unquote, but even on PS5 and Xbox Series X, you can see lots of aliasing. Hopefully they implement a better solution in the next game, considering maybe the next one, it's a new engine or something. But I think it's good to see that it's verified, because it actually runs pretty well. But it should, considering the visuals. I think it looks good enough. But 45, I think, is a good in-between to get better draw distances and a native resolution. 45 FPS all the way, at least in my opinion, when it comes to this one, and I think Sniper Elite 5 was the same way. This is, again, basically Sniper Elite 5 with more missions, feels more like a big expansion pack or something like that. New levels in the Sniper Elite 5 engine. Honestly, I can barely tell a difference from this one to 5. Maybe they improve the cameras, the X-ray cameras, how the organs deform when you shoot them. But it's basically the same game. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, but yeah, if you liked Sniper Elite 5, you're probably going to like this one. So basically for 60 frames, if you go into advanced options, I'll lower First of all, the obscurance fields, then the draw distance a little bit lower. And then when it comes to the render scale, we don't have FSR. It's weird because on Sniper Elite 5 we did have that option. It was FSR 1, didn't look particularly great. You need to put this basically at 80%, something like that, in order to stay at 60, even when looking at foliage. So you gotta sacrifice the obscurance fields, the draw distance, and then lower the resolution to 80%. So you lose 20% of the pixel count, but you can play at 60 frames. So all up to you. There's more pop-in, as you can probably notice at the sides. But at least I can guarantee 50 to 60, even looking at foliage. So that's a good outcome if you're into that sort of thing. So yeah, if you go for 60, you get more blurriness, although the game already has lots of aliasing by itself. Where's the sniper? Oh, right there. Oof. There we go. So yeah, by itself, the sacrificing resolution is not that big of a deal in the smaller screen because it already looks aliased on the native resolution, which is quite a shame. I wish they could improve on that front. But then when it comes to the settings, you have to sacrifice the draw distance quite a bit. So I'm getting shot at from everywhere. What about 90 FPS? No, not gonna happen. We get CPU bound. Even in some parts when we're at 60, it's clearly CPU bound, so keep that in mind. But 60 frames, it looks okay. I'll probably just play it at 45 to get that extra draw distance and pixel count. But either way, I don't think it's bad at all. Graphics are fine. It's just not next gen, not even close. It's still Sniper Elite 5 at its core. And I will call this Sniper Elite 5 British Edition, because instead of being an American sniper, you are British. Sale, I think, is, again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But at the same time, I don't know. It just feels like a full-priced Sniper Elite 5 expansion. So yeah, take that as you will. I'll play Sniper Elite 5 personally if you never played one of these. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did taking a look at it. Again, huge Sniper Elite fan. Personally, I was expecting more out of this one. But that's it. It's completely playable on Steam Deck, verified. I think is completely justified for this one. I still think the text is a bit small, even if we increase it in the menu. But yeah, seems like a great experience so far from even foliage heavy areas. Thank you guys. See you next time.